Hello there, my lovely people from YouTube. It's time for another Witchcrafter video by yours truly, Feko the Alpaca Butler. So, in the last video, I have explained to you how you can use the new cards Witchcrafter, Vice Madame, and the new fusion card, Witchcrafter Confusion Confession, in order to make some pretty decent turn 1 boards. But guess what? Ever since then we have actually gotten ourselves a new toy, namely Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. Technically she's not a Witchcrafter, but she does almost anything we can hope for. So basically what this does for us is that instead of using 3 cards from our hand or field in order to bring out Vice Madame, we can now simply normal summon Cartesia, use a Witchcrafter and Cartesia on the field as fusion material, and we have a 2-card Vice Madame right there. This opens up some very interesting combos for us. I would like to point out the inclusion of Bowload Savage Dragon and Abyss Dweller, because with Cartesia, we have 2 level 4 monsters at the end of the day on our board, together with Shmieta, which means that we can really easily go into these cards to, for example, interrupt some Tearlament plays. Another thing that you've probably already noticed with this deck is that it is a 60-card grass deck. Since Witchcrafters really benefit a lot from having a lot of their cards into the graveyard, I think this is one of the most fun ways to play this deck right now. In turn, it can become really inconsistent. Sometimes you just have hands where you can't play any cards at all, but if you do manage to resolve the grass that looks greener, then you will have a lot of cards to play with from the graveyard, which makes it very fun. So first of all, I would like to show you what this deck can really perform when there is a Witchcrafting Perfect Storm. We start out with that grass that looks greener in our hand, activate it and pray that our opponent doesn't have Ash. Now this loaded up our graveyard with 20 juicy cards, and we activate Magician's Restage from our hand to summon Magician's Soul right from the graveyard. And guess what? Magician's Restage is not a once per turn, so we can use the second Magician's Restage to summon Pottery from our graveyard. Next up, I will be using Magician's Soul to send both of Magician's Restage to the graveyard in order to draw 2 cards. Now, unfortunately, what happened here is that I actually drew Magician's Right Hand, which is kind of too bad, because the 2 Magician's Restages that went to the graveyard have an effect where if they go to the graveyard, I get to search Magician's Right Hand or Left Hand right from my deck, and that is also not a once per turn, so I could have just searched both of the hands. But it's not the end of the world. Next, we link summon Cross Sheep and activate Magicalized Fusion to summon Witchcrafter Vice Madame to a zone the Cross Sheep points to, which will allow us to summon Cartesia from our graveyard. We normal summon Shmieta and use Right Hand in order to trigger Witchcrafter Vice Madame's effect of special summoning a level 6 or lower Witchcrafter monster from our deck. Now, as you can see, this is already looking pretty good. We have 5 monsters on the field, a spell, and a trap negate. And Vice Madame is ready to pop cards left, right, and center, and also still give us another Witchcrafter spell or trap from the graveyard. Remember, each of these effects can be used once per turn. We get ourselves Holiday and special summon once again. Now, with these free materials, we can go into a free material Appaloosa, which is already a huge threat. And as I explained earlier, with Cartesia and Schmierta, we summon Borrowload Savage Dragon with 3 whole tokens. Now, since I still had Jenny's graveyard effect available to me, I decided to use it and put Holiday into the Banish Zone in order to use its effect and bring out Witchcrafter Golem Aruru. Witchcrafter Golem Aruru really isn't the optimal choice in this situation. I also could have tried to maybe summon Heine or Vare if I would have had them in the graveyard already, or I could have simply used the Schmierta effect in the graveyard to put Vare or Heine into the graveyard, and that would have been even more of a threat than Witchcrafter Golem Aruru. But it's fine. Yeah. So as you can see, this is a pretty juicy board. Going into our opponent's next turn, we have 3 monster negates, we have 1 Omni negate from Borrowload Savage Dragon, and we have 1 pop and 1 special summon, and potentially also get another card into our hand through Vice Madame. And then we also have a spell negate and a trap negate, making it very difficult for our opponent to play. Okay, next I would like to show you how the Witchcrafter 60 card deck can perform against the best deck in the current environment, which is Tearlaments with a sprinkle of Branded. We start off with Chicken Game for a free draw and special summon Magician Souls, but unfortunately we get rudely interrupted. The great thing about Magician Souls and Chicken Game is that first of all you can of course draw a card with Chicken Game itself, and then special summon Magician Soul to get rid of the Chicken Game and draw yet another card before your opponent gets to use the effect of Chicken Game, basically negating its downside entirely. If only it would have worked. Fortunately, our opponent does mill Kelbeck, which also gives us some monsters in the graveyard. And to our delight, Agido will mill 5 more cards for us to use during our own turn potentially. But our opponent's mills are nothing to scoff at as well, allowing them to bring out quite the army of monsters. And we're gonna have to see how we deal with this. Masquerade is not the end of the world. We don't have that many activations left to us, but it is quite annoying. Kaleido Heart bounces the Chicken Game, which is absolutely fine for us. It served its purpose, so I don't mind at that point. We use Jenny in the graveyard, get ourselves Schmierta in the hand. That's usually the best option of a level 4 lower Witchcrafter monster to have. And we grab ourselves another Magician Soul, which unfortunately can't be special summoned this turn. But hey, we do manage to get out Heine and fusion summon through Cartesia's effect to have a Vice Master on our field. And we even get to use Schmierta's effect to dump another card and destroy a card on the opponent's field. At least we don't have to pay anymore. We even could have gotten ourselves some nice graveyard effects right here, but our opponent decides to rudely interrupt us with his Ishizu cards. Fortunately, we do still have the effect of Heine. But Kaleido Heart comes right back. Now, this was our first turn, and we are facing a pretty scary situation. Our board is not really optimal, and our opponent already has quite the strong monsters on their board. We're gonna have to see how this goes. Fortunately, Patronus does come in handy for these kind of situations, giving us another spell card. Which will summon another Heine for us. So the reason why I selected a second Heine here is because Heine has this funny effect where if she's on the field, your opponent cannot target other spellcaster monsters with effects. So if you have two Heine on the field, that means your opponent cannot target spellcaster monsters at all. In retrospect, in this situation, I probably should have just destroyed Tearlaments Scream to avoid the lowering of the attack points of my monsters. And our opponent decides to bounce back our buy street. And on reaction, fortunately, we can use Heine to send buy street to the graveyard in order to at least get some use out of it. Kelback mills more cards, which isn't all that helpful right now, but might come in handy later. Luckily, one of the milled cards was Magician's Restage, giving us another card in our hand. You can never have enough spells as a Witchcrafter deck in your hand. And here comes Mirror Jade. Now, I decided to use Vice Master's effect of Destruction, and in response my opponent used Mirror Jade's Banish effect. Unfortunately, I then decided to make a pretty bad mistake and use Cartesia's effect in order to fuse away the Vice Madame, because I figured that if I do that, he wouldn't be able to banish her. But the banish effect of Mirror Jade is non-targeting, unfortunately. Or is it a mistake? Maybe that will come in handy later for us. We'll have to see. Anyways, our opponent has a pretty strong board. But fortunately, we did get a pottery on the field, summoned Madame Vare, and now at least our opponent won't be able to kill us. Now let's see, how are we going to recover from this? Another thing to note here is that Cartesia has a second effect where if she's in the graveyard and a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard in the same turn, then you are able to add her back to your hand during the end phase. Unfortunately, our opponent decided to deny us that pleasure. Don't forget, Patronus can also reset spellcrafters which are banished. And what do you know? The Vice Madame in the graveyard actually turns out to be useful, since I was able to use Holiday to bring her right back to the field. This time I'm going to destroy Scream in order to avoid that pesky attack reduction, because boy oh boy, we're gonna need every attack point here. Collaboration can be quite effective as a game ender. I usually play it at 1, since you can search it through Patronus, for example, or through Vice Madame. But boy oh boy, when it works, it works. Decide to summon Relinquish Anima here, just to remove another monster from the field, but ultimately, this should be it. Vice Madame's attack get boosted to 6700 and she can attack twice, dealing massive damage. So in conclusion, I would say that Witchcrafter is a very fun and very versatile deck, and if they are allowed to build a board, then they can rival even the best decks in the game. But it does have its problems, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. If you are building a Witchcrafter deck, then you are not going to be playing the most efficient or most reliable way, but boy oh boy, you're gonna have some fun. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any questions or suggestions, then please let me know in the comments, and I see you next time. Goodbye.